You know, I think the word result is pretty interesting because to determine a result, we have to identify exactly what we're trying to achieve. So, and that's all process. That's all a process of setting goals, having a vision, having a purpose, what your value system is about. But results typically are used so that we could measure our success, our growth, our lack thereof. Okay.
You know, as I was thinking about results, and you're talking about the goal settings, right?
Yes.
What starts the vision? And I would think the goal, before you have a goal, you will have a vision in your mind.
You know, when we talk about results, there isn't just one result that I'm looking for every day. There's a number of things that just in one day that I want to achieve. You know, I have chores around the house. I have interactions with clients that I work with. I have health goals. So I think the key to working with results is to identify specifically what result are you trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And if we identify the result, we could talk about what it is going to take to get the result.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question about specific results. So you mentioned that you have health goals, chores, and things like that with family and home life.
Right.
Could you give an example of a specific result? I have a theory, but I want to hear what your example is.
I'll give you my most recent.
Okay.
I like to do walking right now. As you know, I'm in my 70s, my late 70s. And the older I've gotten, I find it's more difficult to do some of the physical things that I've done in the past, but I always wanted to stay physically active. So I decided that I would make sure that I have a walking routine.
Okay.
And my walking routine basically consisted of going to a mall that was had a circumference of 0.8 of a mile. And if I walked that circumference 4 times, I would have walked 3.2 miles. And that was going pretty good for me. But I felt that, it was still limiting the amount of flexibility that I was forcing myself to do. So recently, my wife and I decided to purchase an elliptical. Now, my goal with the elliptical is to be on it at a resistant rate of 3. It goes from like 0 to 12. Mm-hmm. And to be able to go continually for 20 minutes. Well, the first day I did it, I couldn't do 5 minutes. And I thought, wow, my joints were bothering me.
Oh, that hurts.
So I said, I'm going to go up a minute a day. The day before yesterday, I went 10 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Now, my goal is 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So to me, what do I have to do every day or every other day? What sequence do I need to put in place so that I have the self-discipline to constantly be improving until I reach that goal? Now, the next thing, of course, that you could ask is once I get to 20 minutes, then what?
That's where I was at.
And knowing the way that I'm wired, I'm going to want to either increase the resistance or the time and do more.
Right.
And I have to tell you, already I'm feeling the benefits of it. I really feel pretty good about it.
Wonderful. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on a theory that kind of turns the results-oriented mindset on its head. In the sense that as opposed to, for instance, your 20 minutes at resistance level 3, as opposed to setting that particular goal, saying, I want to, for the rest of my life, or as long as I'm able to, keep increasing, 2 minutes a week or something for good. So having a mindset, for instance, or another example would be somebody that says, I'm 100 pounds overweight and I would like to drop 100 pounds, as opposed to setting the 100-pound goal, saying my goal, then my lifestyle change is going to become a person who eats better, exercises every day, takes a walk, and drinks a ton of water. So the goal, or instead of focusing on the finish line, it's concentrating on every step of the race, so to speak.
Okay, but you used the key word. It's mindset.
Okay.
You said you have to, and that's exactly what it takes. I think that I have a saying that anything is possible and everything could work. And I really believe that. Knowing that, certainly there are things that may not be possible. But this mindset of knowing that I don't care what anybody says, if I'm going to attempt to do it, it's going to happen.
Right.
So here's what we have the opportunity to do. Anything we want to do and have it convert to something that happens intuitively to us requires us to have a high level of self-awareness about it and actually put the attributes into the activity of behavior. For example, let's say that I want to improve my vocabulary so I don't say negative words, I don't use profanity, or whatever. And what happens is once I become aware of that, and I tell other people, sometimes if you have a good friend and you say, here's where I want to go in the next 20 years, and you have conversations with that person periodically to hold yourself to account. That's what it takes.
Right.
You know, we all have done that. And I think, Mike, even you know, when you were a little boy, you had an envision of what you wanted to be as you're growing up, just like I did, just like everyone does.
Right.
And with me, what was important was, well, there were two things. Number one, I was always very aware of God because of the way I was brought up. I always desired to be the type of individual that was well-behaved and had admirable character, ever since I was little. So that has been with me all of my life. So that has been a mindset.
Yeah.
And that's strictly what it is. Once we decide, you know, like we're all Christians, everyone is at a different place with their theological capability and their walk with Christ. Well, I want to continue that walk to get stronger and stronger and stronger. So I have to figure out, if I'm serious about that, what am I doing about it? Am I reading my Bible as much as I could? No, I'm not, but I could do more. I pay a lot of attention to Christian television because I'm a poor reader, and I get a lot out of that.
Okay.
The people I hang around with have those same kind of values. So it's part of having this mindset that you make active through your behavior.
Rich, what comes to my mind in this subject is risk versus reward. Okay?
Good.
Because when you set a goal, because I know we're talking about results.
Yep.
When you set a goal, that is so vital because setting a goal is one thing, but is it an appropriate goal? You know, so when I talk about risk versus reward, I think about things like, say, you know, you dare someone, well, you say, hey, would you dare me to do such and such a thing? Okay? Jump off of this cliff
Oh, yeah.
and land in the trees or bushes so I wouldn't hurt myself. Okay?
Right.
So you do it. So there's great risk, but what is the reward? Very little reward, just to be able to say you did it. Okay? So, and I say that to say, as you're working with these various groups or organizations, you know, someone can come up with a bright idea, hey, we should do this. And so then everyone starts working around how do we put it together so we can achieve this result. But someone has to balance it out to say, is that result that you're looking for, have you actually looked at it and determined whether it's beneficial or not?
And
Because to your point, you can achieve anything.
Yes.
But anything that's achieved, is it worth achieving? Is it beneficial or could it be a detriment?
Right. And when you look at the risk, first of all, I think risk is extremely, I enjoy risk. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. There's something that motivates me when the chore seems to be tough. It's going to require doing things that most people are not willing to do. I like that. To me, it goes back to when I was a little boy, and my mom and my dad said, "Oh, Rich has got asthma. You know, he'll never be an athlete." And back then I said, "That's a bunch of baloney." You know, so like I wanted to prove myself. So when we establish a goal for a result, one of the things to consider is why do we want that result, and what are we going to do with it? Now, when we get into the challenging part of life where people are challenging us to do something just to prove whether or not we're willing to take the risk, that what happens at that point usually is our ego and pride becomes too strong, and we put ourselves in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So we have to be guarded by that. Are we doing it just to show somebody that I could show you? Or once we get it done, what will you have accomplished? And is it going to, and it's interesting because someone gave this to me and I'm going to use it for the rest of my life. Is that achievement going to bring you closer to God or drive you away? And that's a good way to determine the way that we make the choices we make.
Yeah, wonderful, because as you had stated, I don't know if you stated on camera or prior to us starting, you talked about your reading ability.
Right.
Because I was thinking, if it's say a church setting and the pastor decided that the goal is going to be for everyone to read, and then now in the pastor's mind, this is good for everyone.
Right.
But not knowing the individuals within the body, it's not necessarily good for everyone, even though the desired goal seems to be good for everyone.
Right. And that, again, when you talk about that, it brings my mind to the point that if I'm pastoring a congregation, it's very important, where the pastor is the shepherd of the flock. Now, the shepherd has to know their sheep.
Every single one.
Every one of that's a hard job.
Yeah.
And when you get into a church that has more than 5 people, it becomes harder and harder and harder. Mm-hmm. And then, so the key is we have to be aware that not everybody has the same intellect. Not everybody is at the same place. One of the things that I've done whenever I work with pastors, the very first thing I let them know is I want you to be absolutely clear that theologically I'm nowhere near where you are. I said my gifts and talent truly come in working through and with people. I says that's what God has gifted me with. I said I don't know the Bible cover to cover like you may, but I could do tell you that what I know I practice and it is revealed in my walk. So everyone is different. I had a situation occur when we were doing the training where someone joined the class after everyone signed up. He came in and I was happy that he was interested, so I gave him the material and I said, here, join us, I'm happy. During break he came up to me very quietly and he says, Rich, I just want you to know that I don't know how to read or write. Now this is a gentleman that was in his 50s. Now I could relate to that because I know what it's like to struggle to read. So understanding that, this helped me to know, okay, I have to really perhaps treat him a little differently. Now, let me tell you what came of that, because this is a good thing. We have a few people that, as you know, we share, we're very transparent with. So I had mentioned to a good friend of mine about the gentleman that had a difficulty reading and writing. And this guy is quite brilliant. He says, will you mind if I talk to this guy and let him know that I know that because of what you told me that he struggles with reading and writing, and then I will offer to help him. I said, please do. So he meets with the gentleman and he offers his help, and the gentleman says, oh, I would love it. So they're meeting once a week on a Tuesday.
Wonderful.
I mean, isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, to me, I'm not a pastor, but I understood that person in the group. And look what happened.
Yeah.
Okay? So understanding is huge, really huge.
To me, that also speaks to the importance of being aware of other people's perspectives.
Yes.
And the way because the way that you view this exact moment is different from the way that I view this moment, and I have to be aware of that at all times in order to be able to relate to you,
Most definitely. We communicate in a way that we understand, and we automatically believe that you're going to understand me the way that I understand me.
Right.
When that's never true.
Right.
And when you become that aware and it's important to you, you learn how to make sure that we know what we're talking about. I said to Ethan, and I get a kick out of this statement, on our Wednesday night men's group, we get into these conversations. and we talk to one another using words that we don't understand the same way. The result of that is
fancy.
Yeah, the result of that is nobody knows what they're talking about. I mean, it's kind of far, it's far out, but the reality is no. And if there isn't somebody to bring the conversation back to center, it gets totally misunderstood and lost. Then the next thing, it doesn't happen with this group. The next thing that can happen is we start getting at odds with one another because you feel that way and I feel this way and you don't believe I'm right and you think, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Unity is tough to achieve. Really hard to achieve.
Yes, especially when ego is not checked.
Exactly.
You know what I was thinking? I wrote down a lot of notes. So the risk versus reward is something that really jumped in my mind concerning the challenge. I think the word challenge kind of popped out at me. So when you set a goal and you're looking for a particular result, you've gave yourself a challenge, right? To achieve a certain end, right? The goal is an end or a result, right? But what do we do when the roadblocks come within that?
Oh.
Does the goal change or does the process have to be reevaluated?
It's part of we have to find this 8-step process because I don't want to misquote it.
Okay.
Not now.
All right.
But part of the 8-step process is what do we need to add or take away in order for us to move forward? So we are adjusting the process all the time. You have to. Okay?
Yes.
Now, do you ever change the goal? Sometimes you do. Okay, and that now it gets like, well, when do I decide that, you know what, maybe doing that elliptical for 20 minutes is, how about we go for 15? Yeah. Now, if I change the goal from 20 to 15, I might feel a little bit, well, I let myself down. But on the other hand, when I reach 15, what will I do? Then I may go up to 20.
Yeah,
follow?
Yeah.
So I think what we shouldn't do is we shouldn't beat ourselves up when we encounter obstacles and barriers and challenges because they're going to come. They're definitely going to come. I think the key to that is how do we strengthen ourselves because of the obstacles and the challenges? Throwing in the towel is not ever an answer. And I think I mentioned it when I was teaching last week, that failure is final. So as long as it's not final, you didn't fail. Okay? It's okay for me to say, I'm going to do, I remember being in the Army too, and one of the things they asked us to do is we had to do 50 perfect push-ups. And I was in pretty good shape, and they made you do every one perfect. I did 60 push-ups, but only got credit for 48.
Sweet Jesus.
But the point is,
that would have been my last day.
So that's a good example. Okay, you came close, but so now if I had another opportunity, which you only get one chance, if I had another opportunity, you know what I would have been doing? I would have been doing more push-ups because I want to reach that goal of 50 perfect push-ups.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so the thing is, you're going to come in, if you think that by setting a goal and having a result that you're expecting of yourself is going to happen just because you mentally say so, it doesn't work like that. And if it does, then you don't have very lofty goals.
That's it.
I mean, that's like,
Well, what came to my mind as we're discussing this section here is, still being the person that's working, and then you would say the corporate. When we go through yearly and they have us set our goals, right?
Yes.
Individually. And those goals are generally based on what the corporation has decided.
Yep.
Okay.
Been there.
And of course, everything funnels down, right?
Yes.
Makes perfect sense, right? I haven't heard it so much of late, but there was a time where the corporation would set a goal, then they would set a stretch goal.
Yes.
Right? So the goal may be, 6% return on investment, right?
Yes.
But the stretch may be 7.5.
Right.
Okay. So on paper, it all sounds good. But as most of us know, when you're trying to increase efficiency, low-hanging fruit is easy, or
Yes.
much easier to obtain. And so it's easier to go from 40% efficiency to 90% efficiency than it is to go from 90% to 100%.
Yes.
And then on top of that, if it's possible to do more than 100%, depending on the setting, is there an appreciation of what that effort does to the corporation and to the individuals themselves? Okay.
I could prove it to you right now.
Go ahead.
Will you both please stand up? Okay. How high is that ceiling? I want you to reach as high as you possibly can. As high as you possibly can with both hands. Seriously. Only for a few seconds. You got it? Now, reach a little higher. See what you did?
Yep, stretched.
That's the point.
Ah, that's good. I like that.
Someone did that to me, and I thought, boy, doesn't that say it?
I love that. I
Stretch.
love that.
Now, what's really interesting, you talk about stretch goals. When I was in the corporate world, when I was in the transportation industry, and I remember one year where they did exactly that, and they said, if you guys reach the stretch goal, we're all going to go to, we went to a really nice resort in Florida to celebrate, and we did it. And it was really lofty. But what that stretch goal did for us, we had a team of people that wanted to prove how good they were. And we did it. I can't remember
really
the
cool.
name of it was a really, really beautiful resort. We were able to go deep sea fishing and play golf and all that. And when they put the goal out there, we thought, man, that is really, really outrageous. But my belief is that as much as we think we could extend ourselves, and I know you could have always done more.
That's true.
When I look at when I was playing football, I worked out a lot. Now, when I look back, I could have worked out harder. What limit do you want to place on yourself?
That's the point that's the thing that I was thinking, because if you achieve even that stretch goal, now don't you run the risk of now that becomes the minimum standard for which now you go further?
Right.
And how far can you realistically stretch now or grow?
I don't know the answer to that question, because I think no one has ever found out. I really mean it. I mean, you could take the person that has achieved the most ever, and I can guarantee you that they could have achieved a little bit more.
Sure.
And that's the way I think God made us.
Yeah.
I think if we looked at not what we could do, but what He could do, just that statement alone, can you do as much as He could do? Why not? He's given us the opportunity. He's given us who He is. We hold ourselves back no matter how much we go, there's still more. And I like the idea of having there's still more. Yeah. I think at this point in time, when I look at how I view the health of our country, the health of the world, there's people just aren't in the physical shape that they were in, that they could be in. Let's not make any comparisons. And what is intriguing us is the mental capabilities that we're getting through technology. That's driving our interest. Now, there was a time when we didn't have that technology, so what drove our interest was different.
Right.
Right. And now I'm saying, what is that going to do to us as a people over time when the goals that we have personally start changing? What is it doing to us? Yeah. When I look at, then I'll tell you how I evaluate it, that I get upset with it. I look at the commercials that we have on TV, and very few of them have people that are fit in them. Most of the commercials I see, people are overweight. They don't look good. And I know that might be carnal to an extent, but I know that when I look good, I feel good. And when I feel good, I'm more capable. And I think we've lost our desire to do that as people. I really do. Yeah. I'm one of the old people that is guilty of this. I look at other people my age and I say to myself, I'm glad I'm not like them. When in fact I probably am, but in my mind, that's not the way I want to be.
Right.
Why do you think I bought an elliptical?
Yeah.
Okay?
That's true.
So just going back to taking a step back to where Ethan was asking his question about the challenges that come, and your response about the challenges that come when we set goals. One of the things that came to my mind is extreme levels of self-awareness.
Yes.
Because in order to set a goal for myself personally, I have to know who I am and even what I think I might be capable of to even find a finish line to set. You know what I mean? And then also understanding that, to your point about switching maybe down to 15 minutes and then going back to 20 minutes,
right, is
understanding that setting a goal that I can see in my mind is easier to achieve than one that is 20 minutes. I can see myself at 15, and so let's work to 15, and then I'll be able to see 20.
If it's working for you, you do it.
Yes.
You really, now you hit on there's a key word, and it's that self-awareness word. There are two things that, when I think of self-awareness, self-awareness, I think, determines who we are.
Absolutely. I agree.
Now, self-discipline determines whether or not we do it.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay?
I love it.
So you have self-awareness, then you have self-discipline.
Yes.
Discipline is such a beautiful word. We don't like it.
True.
It's uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
Right, it's always uncomfortable.
But it's beneficial.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So one thing I thought about the discipline is it's consistent effort.
Yep.
Right? Discipline is
That's
like
good.
a consistent effort to reach a particular end. Like what we're talking about, right?
Right.
We're trying to reach a particular end. Sometimes the peripherals, the surrounding people that you may voice this goal to, they're going to check you.
Oh, absolutely.
What you said earlier. You said that you may come across somebody that say, hey, how's this goal that you set? How's it working out for you? And that type of check,
it's healthy.
It's very healthy, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, to me, and this is really good, I could do it with Diana, and we do this. I have a sweet tooth.
Okay.
We have candy in the house. I'm going to the doctor next week. And I'm saying to myself, you stupid guy, why did you eat all that candy? And then I say to Diane, honey, I'm not buying candy anymore. She says, good, we don't need it. Guess who buys the candy again? Me. I go for a while, then I slip back. And then she'll say, we said we weren't going to do this. So then I correct again.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're absolutely right. Having people that we allow ourselves to be accountable to is necessary for me. When I tell somebody that I have the elliptical, now you guys know my goal, I can't not do it. I'll let myself down. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna ask.
30 minutes. What did I say? Do 30 minutes?
20.
20 minutes.
20 at
I
level
could do
3.
30 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm at 10.
Not. You can do it.
I just did 10. So I would like to come back in 2 weeks and say I'm at 20.
Yeah.
Now, when I'm at 20, then I'm going to start increasing the resistance
There you go.
because I'm feeling good. If on the other hand, and this is another thing that I think we should recognize, if I say that I'm going to be at 20 and I'm really trying hard to do it and my right knee starts really hurting and I'm doing damage, then it's time to say you got to change the goal.
Change the goal.
Yeah.
And we have to be, once the goal that we set or the result that we set becomes harmful, we have to reevaluate it.
You are saying exactly, that's the reason why I brought up the roadblocks, right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't consider that your knee would give out. You didn't.
Right, no.
There's certain things we do not consider when our where our desires and our passion for a particular end or a goal is basically on that journey or in the process, and then when that pitfall or that roadblock comes, how do we manage our mindset? You know what I'm saying? Within that confines of that process. I like you about to say something, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to throw one thing in. So one thing that sticks out to me about what you just said and your response is the awareness, the understanding that we have to be able to give ourselves grace.
Yes.
Beautiful.
When setting a goal, if there's a roadblock, because we said before, the difficulty is often ourselves.
That's right.
And so it's important to remember I have to give myself grace with my candy addiction and say, I bought it, I had a piece, and then I came back to myself and I say, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up for doing it. I'm just going to say, okay, it's time to correct again. And that's the way it has to constantly be. I see an error or I see something that I'd like to change, and then I change it. And then I work until another thing happens, and then I change it. And then,
So I do have a question with that, like with this. So does that does that behavior like that, does it become our habit where we, how can I explain this right? Does that 2-step forward and 4-step once or so,
One step
does
back.
that become like a habit? You know what I mean? Where we give, where that grace to ourselves end up becoming some type of hindrance for ourselves individually from reaching our goal.
I have a response, but I would like to hear it.
No, go ahead, Mike. I'll wait till you go.
I
and then
think
I'll
that's
go.
the very nature of life.
Yeah.
I think the nature of life ebbs and flows. We have wins and we have
Yeah,
losses.
I do.
And I think that it's a constant, it's a trending upward. As long as we have the dedication and discipline to
There you
keep
go.
moving
Yes.
forward, we fail, but the next time we go up higher and we fail, and then the next time we go up
That's-
higher.
There you go.
And I think that's the nature of life, as long as we have the discipline and
Nice.
I heard a preacher
desire to
talk
do so.
about sin this way, and I absolutely loved it, because how many times have I said, I'm going to improve my vocabulary or my anger? And I'm good now. Honey, I just want you to know, Diana, that I'm going to improve my language. I'm going to watch my tongue. I do good for about a week, and then I lose it. So now my goal is, I just realized I did it a week. My goal now is, I wonder if I could do it 2 weeks.
Yep.
And what this pastor was talking about is understanding that we fall into sin, and we shouldn't let sin captivate us. We have to realize that if we create a mindset and discipline and behaviors that allow us to go longer and longer and longer, ultimately, it's going to have a great influence on who we are.
Two passages came into my mind, and I think they actually go together, because what we're really talking about when we're talking about results or goal setting is growth.
Yes.
Okay? So, one passage where Paul said, till Christ be formed in you. Okay? So knowing that the Christ or the Christ mindset is the ultimate, now you have to stretch or grow into it.
Yes.
Okay?
Good point.
Now, in Matthew, Jesus said, watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation, because the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Okay? So sometimes we might take that as a negative statement concerning the flesh, but I don't think that's necessarily what he was trying to say. Because when you set the ultimate goal, that's being driven by the spirit and the imagination that you have, and yes, I can do this, but then if you're starting from a place where, like you said, your muscles aren't ready to do that, well, you want to get them there. So that's where shorter goals may be necessary.
Absolutely.
So recognizing the weakness in this context may not necessarily be a negative thing, but just a reality of what you're dealing with.
Yes.
And so what I'm looking at that is, so when you're dealing with people and you see where you're starting from, and you're actually doing harm if you try to take them from 0 to 100 right away.
Not only can you do harm, but you could give them a defeatist attitude where they don't want to do it because they think it's impossible. One of the things a young associate pastor did that I use this example a lot over the years. He comes up at the beginning of a service, and he's this was back in the would have been in the 80s. And we're still recovering from the hippie movement. And he had long hair, and he kind of strutted around like a little wise guy, but he was good. He looks at the audience, and there's about 500 people in the church. He says, do you ever think about it? Anytime you sin, you got to think about it first. And I thought, he's right. Well, it made me think of what you were talking about. Anytime we compromise, we know we're compromising. Even when you're dealing with the spirit and the flesh, you know that. So what are you going to do with it?
Wow.
And that's the key.
Man.
And that's where self-awareness is crucial. If we really want to please him, number one, we have the self-awareness. And if you're feeling guilt, I think that's wonderful. Because if you're feeling guilt, you know you screwed up. So now let's get to the point where that guilt doesn't come back.
Right.
And that's what you talk about growth. That's all part of the growth process. And you know what's going to, the reality of it is this. We're going to have to deal with that until the day he calls us home.